record this. Great. Unfortunately, as adults, it's up to us to decide what is the best, what's attainable, what's realistic. And life is super ambiguous, and that makes it more stressful and difficult, always asking, are we doing enough? So I want to work with you all through 2018, make it amazing. And specifically, I want to show you that really, truly, the only way that we can make 2018 amazing is to understand this fundamental truth that innovation is a process, not a thing. So if we want to innovate in our lives or our businesses or at work, we need to be committed to continuous improvement and learning. We just need to continue to come back to where we started, recognize where we are now, and then figure out what we need to get to that next step. So I know most of you, we've all spoken, so I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. You know me, I'm Lindsay, I'm the lady engineer. I've been working in Silicon Valley for 15 years, 100 startups and investors and teams across Fortune 500 firms. I help startups raise funding and get customers efficiently, hopefully before they invest too much money in building a product that no one wants. For the backstory is back in 2015, it was only my second year self-employed, and I had no idea what I was doing, no idea what product or service I wanted to offer. I didn't know the exact customer I wanted to work with and how I was repeatedly going to get them. It was a recipe for disaster. So I got a contract for 6 months where I worked full-time for this Fortune 500 firm, and I ended up totally burnt out. And I wanted to get out of NYC and made plans to go to Colorado for the winter. But the world wanted something else for me. So I was back in Philly and I realized I needed to lean into that burnout instead of running away from it. And I was desperate for something better and I wasn't sure how to get to it. So Louis C.K. really sums it up here. Feeling unsure and lost is part of our path and we don't want to avoid it. And it is hard. I took this step back. It propelled me forward. So what did I do? It's what I continue to do now. I had a lot of notebooks and journals to look through, and I highlighted important things, and I added Post-it notes. I go through a lot of these where I had good ideas and thoughts, and I crossed out anything that was no longer valuable. I was able to follow what I had done and all of the decisions that I had made. I started categorizing my accomplishments and my failures. And I use this tool that I'm going to share with you today called the Retrospective. It's an assessment technique that's part of the agile software methodology. And it's often implemented poorly on teams because we need to be really introspective and vulnerable with our teammates. So that can be really awkward. Not just with your coworkers, but with your boss too, to point out what's working and not working. But it works really well for ourselves, and that is why I'm sharing it with you. So for me, themes emerge, like I wasn't finishing some of my projects. Most importantly, I really didn't understand how to manage myself as a business. And I actually had done these mini retrospectives in my journal, but nothing really like materialized in my day-to-day. And you'll actually see that I put a lot in my physical world now because of that learning about myself. So I set goals for the rest of 2016. I focused on focus. I learned the basic components of my business and filled in the gaps of what I didn't know. I picked up skills that I needed to manage myself. And I saw a bunch of success, and I started sharing it with you guys in 2017. I saw other people have their own breakthroughs. Some people saw that their goals were too lenient, or they were too ambitious, or way too unrealistic. For instance, I said I would do this workshop once every quarter in 2017, but I only did it once at the beginning of the year and just one more time after that. So I'm trying again in 2018. It makes a lot more sense this year than it did last year. Some people found that they were focusing way too much on the negative, and they had a lot of positive things to appreciate. And this is one of our biggest commonalities. But what am I seeing in 2018? I talk with others not just about their professional goals, but what else is going on in our lives. There is no separation of work and play. It's all together. I did a series of one-on-ones with women from a networking group I'm in, and here's the thing. Tell me if any of this is familiar to you. It's easy to grab goals that aren't really ours. Like, we could say we want 10 talks and lectures by the end of the year. Where did that number come from? Is that realistic? Do we know how to get there? Are we going to get to 10? Does 10 matter? From the outside, we project confidence that we have it all together. And that's one of the things we think everyone else has it figured out. The reality is no one has it figured out. But we ignore ourselves, and we ignore what we really need and feel, or what we're really good at. And we feel like we put others' advice or others' needs ahead of our own. And we are so scared to just say, this isn't for me. This isn't where I thought it was going to go. Those things don't serve us. These things don't serve us when we have really long-term goals. So remember how I said that this all started because I just wanted to run away to Colorado. I'll pretend I can see all of you guys nodding. I don't want to run away anymore because I'm finally ready for the hockey stick. So are you guys all familiar with the hockey stick? This idea that after a lot of toiling and experimenting and hard work with very incremental growth, we hit some inflection point, and then we get that wild, what this chart says, surging growth. But if we keep running away or giving up in that stage 1 and 2, we'll never get to stage 3, right? We have to sit in the hot seat and do the hard work. We don't get to that hockey stick growth if we don't journey through the mud. See those like blade years and the growth inflection point? If we keep starting from the beginning, if we keep running away, we keep starting from the beginning. So let's do some house cleaning really quick. So that was like the first 10 minutes. I want you to definitely close out any distractions. You should have paper and pen. Like I said, I'm a firm believer in putting our thoughts into the physical world rather than just keeping it in our computers. The last note is that when we go through this, it will be an opportunity for you to start asking and answering questions of yourself. I encourage you to participate alongside. That's what this hour is meant to be. But we will move quickly to fit everything into this hour. So make sure you set aside some time, maybe another hour, to review all of your notes and continue this process. I encourage you to make it a practice. All right, so deep breath. What were your goals for 2018? I sent out an email earlier today, asked you to put these down. You might have had goals across health, professional goals, family and relationships, fun, hobbies and enjoyment, or finances. Here's the time to write them down. So you might have phrased them as resolutions, or you might have phrased them as goals. Think back to where you were 3 months ago. What were you doing? And what expectations did you have for yourself, your business, and your life? If it wasn't clear, write them down. And I encourage you, if like you need to raise your hand or put something in the chat, I do have a natural break in like another 2 slides. So I imagine all of you are furiously writing things down right now. I wrote mine down on the wall back here. The next thing you want to do is, let's say that you have 15 points to distribute. I want you to assign those points to your goals. First, let's think about, how soon does this goal need to happen? Is this like a long-term goal, or is it something that needs to be done by June or July? You might want to give it higher points right now because it requires your focus right now. Or how much value or impact will this goal have on your life? You know, sometimes we obsess over things like our weight and our looks when our health is just fine. And the things that really impact us are maybe buckling down and doing some big project we said we would do and haven't started. So think about really the value or the impact that the goals will have on your life. You might have to say goodbye to some of your goals and they get 0 points. You might
give one
goal 15 points.
Lindsay, what were the 5 categories?
Right, so I'll go back really quick. They were, hold on, health, professional goals, family and relationships. You might not have goals in all of these areas. Or you might have like, I have minor goals in the fun hobbies and enjoyment, but it's not something huge that I'm committing to for the entire year. So think about just the big things that you really want to work on. And like I said, you may or may not have one in every category. So with that, I'm going to take a break. Does anyone have any questions? You can either turn your mic on or write them in the chat. Or you can furiously catch up. If you're ready, type in the chat that you're ready. I got 1. I got 2. I got 3. All right. If 3 say so, we're going. All right. So here's the structure. Thank you, Joanne. Here's the structure. I wrote it up here, but it's also on the slide deck. If you have a piece of paper, I'm going to grab a piece of paper over here. Divide it up into 3 sections. All right. We want a happy column, a meh column, and a sad column. So just put a happy face and a meh face and a sad face across the 3. And then I'm going to give you prompts and questions and examples for the next probably 10 to 20 minutes, maybe more, definitely more. We're going to fill out what goes in each column. But let me first show you how to think about it. So first, what's going well? What are you proud of? You want to list your successes in the happy column. The Met column, what was just okay? What was neither great nor so bad? Maybe you made progress, but not as much progress. So there's a little bit of, yeah, I did it, but also I didn't get where I wanted to go. And then what were you sad about? What didn't go so well? What did you try that didn't work? List where you think you failed. And I always say fail in quotes because there is no failure. There are just learning lessons. But we're doing this exercise because we're hard on ourselves. And so there's definitely places where we feel like we are failing. Now, the number one question I always get is, what if I don't have anything in the meh column? So some of us have really strong feelings. Either it's happy and it's sad and nothing's in between. Some of us spread the wealth. Don't worry about it. This is all for you. There's no expectation. So first we're gonna start with the as is situation. And for those of you that are in my mastermind or master class, you've seen this before. As is actually a term that comes out of like an old school way of documenting technical requirements. We want to talk about what's going on now, the as is situation, and the to be, which is the future, what we're going to design. So I want to take a moment to see where you rate yourself. Here are the most common problems for, I think, I got this list from Steve Blank, who has the startup manual. He says this is for startups and entrepreneurs. I think that this is for everyone. We don't have structured process around our personal and professional lives. So rate yourself, maybe 1 to 5, 5 being like, I have a great process, and 1 being like, I have no idea. I approach every day as its own unique snowflake. Have you been open to feedback? We have a hard time being vulnerable. We're trying to do so many amazing things. We don't want to hear the criticism. We're scared of feedback, but have you become more open to feedback? Are you avoiding it? Are you asking for it? What are your thoughts on failure? I told you what my thoughts are at this point, which is there is no failure, there's just learning lessons. What are your thoughts? Are you scared of failure? Are you doing things? Are you playing a conservative play instead of a risky play because you're scared? Also, have there been any hiccups, and how have you recovered? Right? It's not our ability to stay on the horse very long. It's our ability to get back on the horse after we fall off. Falling off is inevitable. So have there been hiccups, and how have you recovered? And finally, if you do have a business, if you are kind of working in a customer-oriented way, how are you thinking about your customer, or how are you thinking about your audience? Are you running around angry that they don't think the way that you think, or are you working on understanding them? Maybe they're your coworkers, maybe they're your employees. Are you working on understanding them so that you can better service them and work with them? Are you getting outside of your own head? All right. Again, if any of you need me to go back, please, jump into the chat on what I have it open. So now that we kind of looked at our as-is situation, hopefully we recognize some things that are happy, meh, and sad. We've also kind of ranked our goals, ranked our goals saying what's really important to us versus maybe what's not as important. So now the question is where are you getting results? So if I look at the goals with the highest points, one of them is to settle into my new home. Am I spending enough time there? So have you been spending your time the way that you allocated those points? And if you have, that's awesome. If you haven't, that might go in the sad column. Or it might go in the meh column, because sometimes we just can't control the things that life throw at us. The next thing we want to do is retrace our steps. So let's just do this for our most important goal, but it's probably something you want to think through. Actually, I want to take a pause. Can you tell me in the chat how many goals you wrote down? Okay, we got 3, 5, 5, 7, 6, 4, 7. For the people that have more than 4, are your points distributed evenly, or is it clear like that there's some, at least like 1 to 3 that are more important? Okay, cool. So I'm hearing that, yeah, we we have like 7 goals, but when we look at them, we're like, 3 or 4 maybe are more important. For those of you that said that you have, you know, maybe even goals, I would challenge you that there must be a hierarchy between those goals, where one really needs to happen before the other can happen, right? So let's take one of those goals, whichever one you gave the most points. So let's retrace our steps. So my most important goal, which is actually something that I had to develop in February, because I realized that my goals weren't my own for most of January. My most important goal is to continue to grow my business authentically being the key word. Now that's like a big kind of unspecific goal, but I'll show you how that's played out in something more specific way. So you have to retrace your decision-making process to remember how you got to where you are right now. So let's see for me. So part of my business is launching my personalized incubator for entrepreneurs labs. So the plus side is that I had a clear product. I had case studies, I had testimonials, I had awesome client outcomes. I had Facebook ads that were working, and I had all the assets for a complete marketing funnel, but something wasn't lining up. So then there was this realization, I had this realization in maybe February, that something wasn't lining up. The landing page wasn't really converting. There's just a lot of, I'll go back to the word mud. There was a lot of mud, and I was trudging through it. But the plus side is like I continue to iterate on the really small details, right? So remember that hockey stick, the handle, right? You need to like really trudge through the mud in there. I realized that what was going on was that it wasn't authentic. It didn't say Lindsay. It didn't read Lindsay when people saw it on the page. So I started updating all the collateral to be more true to who I am, and things started to pick up. Things started to pick up over the past month, and it's a work in progress, but I decided I wanted to feel like it was done by today, which I did this morning, which is very exciting. So I'll give you like 30 seconds, 45 seconds. It sounds short, but it's enough to kind of think about the steps. the decisions that you made, the things that you tried. It's important to look at all those things and give yourself credit for the iteration and the learning. So then when you've gotten this list, you can see how it might map out in the 3 columns. So on the happy side were the things that I said were going well, that I was able to recover, and I updated the collateral. The meh was like, I realized it wasn't working and I came up with something new, but that's something new still takes time. So you can still see I'm still like trudging through the mud, right? And it's a lot of slow and little changes, which can be frustrating. It can be demoralizing. It can be really hard. So maintaining kind of the passion and maintaining the resiliency to keep going, it's hard work. So with that, here's another place to pause. If you have anything in the chat you want to ask, or you want me to go back to a previous slide, please let me know. You can also turn on your mic and speak up.
This is Dustin. I wouldn't mind hearing other people's goals and how they're doing.
Cool. Is there anyone who would like to share a goal? I shared mine. Is there anyone else that would like to share a goal or feels comfortable sharing a goal? I'm not going to call on anyone because this is a very personal thing. All right, Allison, unmute yourself. Tell me what's going on.
I can't sit around and let nobody step up.
Right.
My main goal is to figure out how to raise some money, and I have no money, so that goes in the sad column. But I had a baby, so I'm going to give myself a little bit of a break, and we're doing well, and I'm ready to hit the ground running when I go back to work full-time on May 1st. But in the meantime, what I have been able to accomplish is that I'm actually really ready now. And if I'm honest, I wasn't a couple months ago. I have my wireframes, I have my financials, I know who to ask, I have a plan on how to ask, I've practiced my pitch. I actually have a guy who's sort of functioning as CEO in really the best way, because it's a long story, but it's a good thing.
Good.
I have some more traction. So there's a lot of good stuff. But my meh things are that I feel like time just keeps passing so quickly. And that stresses me out. And I wish I could be a little bit nicer to myself sometimes. I get critical that I haven't done more yet.
Right. But can you also see how much you've accomplished in the past 3 months?
Right? Yeah. I mean, I go up and down, I had a feature in Rachel Ray magazine, and I got a ton of new email signups, and I've done some really great stuff, and I can tell when I write it down. And I think, there's still a lot of more months left, and I feel really ready to go now. So that's probably, though I haven't technically achieved my goal, I actually feel more prepared for it than I think I was a couple months ago.
Yeah, I'm looking for a note that I made for myself about how, everyone wants to know how fast they can make something happen. But for a lot of us, if we try to make something happen too soon, it's just a recipe for disaster. And that time. We don't realize how much thinking goes into like the decisions that we're making, and that ideas need time to incubate, right? And decisions need time to incubate, and we get frustrated that it takes so long. But
Right.
it's a good thing, because usually if we're reaching and it feels unsafe or scary, it's probably because we're not ready, right?
Right. That makes sense.
Does anyone else want to share? And if you do, you can say in the chat, or if you're ready to keep going, also put that in the chat. Cool. There's another break, so Dustin, if you want to share, we'll get there, okay? Cool. Awesome, David, thank you. Great. Okay. So in the beginning of the year, I really asked you a lot of questions to flesh out how everything played out in all of 2017. Since we're only looking at the 3 months, and it's just the first quarter, let's make sure that we're like clear on what it means, what our goals mean to us, and how that actually plays out. So a lot of you may have heard of the SMART goals. I've heard it come up in MBA courses. I've heard of it come up in employee feedback and employee reviews. So now we need to look at our goals and see if we're actually being smart about them. So I want to ask you, how specific are your goals? What does it actually mean? Can you define the who, what, where, when, why, and how? And how do you know that you have succeeded? So if your goals are not specific, you can put that in the sad column. You can say, I didn't set specific goals, or I didn't define this goal, or you could put it in the mad column. Maybe you didn't make as much progress towards a goal because it's unclear what you actually meant by that. And then how far have you gotten towards that goal based on how specific it is? So how do you measure your goals? Is there an objective metric associated with it? Do you have like an exact number? And this is one that I debate, because I think that sometimes there's a feeling and you don't know what that feeling is. It can be very personal, but you know it when you have it. So for example, when I talk about feeling settled in my house, in the beginning of January, I couldn't sit down for more than 30 minutes at a time without thinking of something that needed to get done in the house. And now I can really do my work and have peace of mind. So it's a kind of a feeling. Just figure out how you're going to measure these goals. And then how actionable are they? Like, is this a goal that you can really control? Is this something that you can make happen, or are you totally dependent on other people? Do you have an idea to how to get there? Maybe you look at a goal and you're like, that sounds awesome, but I don't even know where to start. So you could put that in a meh column because maybe you can figure it out. You just haven't prioritized it. Or you realize that the goal of saving the planet is just way out of your control and you need to define it down to something that you can actually do. And then how realistic are your goals? If you're one of those people that has 7 goals and you've whittled it down to 4, but you're still thinking about those other 3, like how realistic are you going to be? How realistic is it for you to actually do all 7 or even do those 4? I had an example from last year, like posting on YouTube like every single week. And after the first month, I realized that that was not a realistic goal. I'm not a content creator and video production person by training. So you have to scale back, and that's okay too. That's the part of continuous learning and improvement. You know, we are not robots. As much as my engineering brain would like me to believe that I could follow a very rigid schedule and get all of this done, that's just not how it works. So, do you really have enough time? And then finally, how timely are your goals? What's the deadline? Do you have a deadline? Is there a specific, are there dates that you can hold yourself to? And then how are you holding yourself accountable? This can be one of the hardest things if you're a solopreneur, you're trying to do something on the side and it's really just you. You know, if you were a professional in your 20s and you wanted to go back to grad school, and you're taking the GREs, you know that you have that date in the distance, and how you are going to study for it and get there. That date holds you accountable. But for us, we can just move that date whenever we want. And sometimes that's okay. And sometimes you really need to figure out how to make yourself accountable. And maybe that's telling a friend to create the sense of urgency so that you don't just let yourself slip. So I do want to recognize that this is a very structured process, but it does bring up a lot of emotions for us. A lot of things come to mind, as Allison mentioned, like you can see how much you've accomplished, but at the same time, you wish like you were so much farther along. Capture those frustrations, and maybe they go on a side piece of paper. Those are emotions and we want to feel them. But right now we're kind of in the thinking space of like making sure that we're super clear on what happened and what needs to happen going forward. So that's where I like to separate the emotional and the kind of engineer and thinking piece, where it's like, these are the things that need to get done. And I will stop and feel these things later, but not right now, okay? So we're not gonna dwell on the feelings because we wanna make progress and we wanna get to the end point. Any questions? We are rounding the corner. Cool. We don't need anyone to talk, it's okay. So in about 5 more seconds, I will continue. All right, so again, what were your goals and where did you lay out your points? Is each one smart? How can you make them better? And what's getting in the way? Maybe there's something that's getting in the way that's a totally positive thing, and that's just life and circumstances, and recognizing that in the context of your other goals is just going to help you be easier on yourself. And then, is there one area where you are spending a lot of time and maybe you need to walk away from it? Or maybe it doesn't line up with how you actually prioritize everything. Okay, anything else? Nope, nope. Tell me when you're ready, because now we're gonna figure out what we're doing now, what we're doing next. Ready, Joanne is ready. Dustin's ready, Allison's ready. David's ready, Melissa's ready, Rory's ready. Cool, awesome, everyone's ready. Man, maybe I didn't challenge you guys hard enough. I need to ask deeper questions and challenge you guys more. So this is what we're gonna do. So I imagine that your pieces of paper are just really messy. I have examples of my own. They're just all over the place, lots of notes, lots of good things. I'll show you a picture of mine just in my notebook, something like that. What we're gonna do now is pick some symbols and start to categorize the things that are commonalities. So maybe something is or is not happening because it has to do with your daily routine. Or for me, stuff doesn't happen because I tend to overthink it and I want to have like a process and a plan, and sometimes I just need to get started. Maybe you're being inconsistent. So what you might want to do is use a square for one category and a triangle for another, a diamond for another, exclamation points. Try to find the themes. Yeah, I like Joanne. I love what you said, kind of a hot mess. But that is life, and we tend to think about each goal in a silo, and we're like, why can't we make this goal happen? And it's like, well, because there's all these other things going on. So now we want to look at all these things and try to pull them together. Maybe highlight the things that are total anomalies. One of the things that I did in this retrospective of mine was I labeled which good things came out of my network. So I could actually see that like half the things in my happy column were coming out of networking. And that kind of reinforces one of my goals, which is to build my dream network. So I'm getting a lot out of that. And then I can also see in the sad column that a lot of my frustrations is just with how slow things are taking, right? So once you start to have these categories, I'll give you another kind of 10 to 15 seconds, then we'll go. Okay, so now we have a general sense of the categories and the buckets in which like the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever fall in. Now we can take another piece of paper and do a trifold again. And this time we want start, stop, and continue. So for everything in your sad column, we want to have some corresponding start, stop, and continue. So in the start column, looking at the things that didn't go well, what can you do to address what can you do to address them? Is there a bad habit that you have to change? Is there something you maybe need to be more proactive about? Maybe if you saw that the way you allocated your points doesn't really reflect the way that you spent your time, then you want to prioritize something. Or if you have a goal and you have no idea how to get there, you need to like do the research or take time to learn. All of these are actually from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I pulled these. We're using his stuff right here now. Create your action items based on his wisdom. So what do you need to stop? So sometimes when we're feeling the negative stuff, we have vices that we go to. Is there a bad habit? Or, you know, we know that starting our day with like a 30-minute run is the best thing for us, but we are staying up too late. And so that's a bad habit that we need to stop. If there's this bad habit, like what's triggering it? Why are you staying up so late? Why are you spending so much time on Facebook? What can you stop? Like and only stop the things that you can actually control. You can't stop the news cycle from driving you crazy, but you can stop yourself from watching the news or limiting your time with the news. And finally, whatever is working for these past 3 months, keep doing it. You should definitely continue to keep doing the things that are getting you closer and closer to your goals. So like I said, the networking piece has really been helping me. So I want to do more of that. I want to continue to do that. You know, what kind of good habits have you been practicing that are helping you? Make sure that you continue doing them. So often we get into a new routine, we're going great, and then we let something throw us off the horse, and then we don't prioritize getting back on the horse. I use the example, the one that comes to mind for me is that I know that my Fitbit is like a great motivator. And then the bracelet broke and I spent too many weeks putting off buying another bracelet, which is too many weeks not using my Fitbit. So then bad habits perpetuated. It's like I need to continue to wear the Fitbit. It is good for me. So what kind of good habits have you been practicing that are helping you? And make sure you identify them. Give yourself a pat on the back for them. Literally give yourself a pat on the back. You guys prioritized yourself for this hour. You gave me your time, which I am, feel so lucky for. I know everyone is super, super busy. A tear just came up in my right eye because I feel so great that you guys are all here and did this with me. This stuff is so important, and when I stop and think about it and I realize how much awesomeness comes out of this exercise, I get mad that I forget to take the time to think, step away from your desk and think. Okay, thanks guys. So actually, because I'm holding myself accountable, the next one is already scheduled. And if you go to that link, you can sign up. I published it already. If one of you signs up right now, that means I am definitely doing it. Last year, I did not do Q2. Q2 is up. So if one of you signs up, I am definitely doing it. And that is how I hold myself accountable. So we'll be talking, we'll do a slightly different format. I keep changing it a little bit as we go through each quarter and as I learn things about myself and about different productivity tools. But, you know, avoiding that summer slump so that we don't walk into September like surprised by how much action and activity is going on. So we'll definitely talk about balancing, like enjoying the summer and also continuing to work towards our goals. All of you know where to find me. I know all of you personally, so you can always schedule time with me through my website or through any of the number of calendar links that you probably have in your email. I would love to hear from you. And after this, I will send you a post-workshop survey that will help me always improve, which is the whole theme of this, which is continuous improvement and learning. With that, we have like 2 more minutes. So if you want to unmute, you can definitely ask me any questions. You could turn your video cameras on and chat. I will stop recording here.